this video that's been floating around. It came across a feed of mine. I think it was maybe on Threads, and it's surprising the way that this guy sounds.
My view is that we are a land of immigrants, and we ought to recognize that. As a matter of fact, I believe America's soul is rejuvenated when people come to our country and work hard to realize dreams. There is an orderly way to have immigration, and that is to recognize people are coming here to do jobs Americans aren't doing, or are not capable of doing, or unwilling to do. And we ought to have a process that enables people to come and do those jobs. It's good for our economy. I think it's, and I think it prevents people from having to sneak in. There are laborers who do jobs people won't do, but there are also incredibly bright students who come. And I think it is a foolhardy policy to limit the number of workers that could contribute, for example, to the productivity of the United States in the internet world. I do believe there will be a rational immigration policy eventually passed. I think there's going to have to be some time. What's interesting about our country, if you study history, is that there are some isms that occasionally pop up. One is isolationism, and its evil twin protectionism, and its evil triplet nativism. So if you study the 20s, for example, there was an American First policy that said, who cares what happens in Europe? Well, what happened in Europe mattered eventually because of World War II. There was Smoot-Hawley, which was a part of an economic policy, which basically said we don't want trade. In other words, let's throw up barriers. And there was an immigration policy that I think during this period argued we had too many Jews and too many Italians, therefore we should have no immigrants. And my point to you is we've been through this kind of period of isolationism, protectionism, nativism. I'm a little concerned that we may be going through the same period. I hope that these isms pass, which would then allow for a more orderly look at immigration policy. But look, I was raised in Texas, and there's a lot of focus on the Hispanic population. I mean, if you're raised in Texas, you understand what it means to interface with Mexican Americans who are Texan, and you realize that we share the same values: faith, family, hard work, commitment to service, and I think we ought to welcome people.
That was George W. Bush, possibly one of our less thinking presidents that we've had. We talked about him when I first started with TYT. That was the guy. That was the focus. That was the guy that started the Iraq War on false pretenses, which they still haven't really talked about in full degree. A guy who also profited off of those wars, who tortured people, and they said it was fine to torture. And he's there talking about immigration and the three isms. Isolation and protectionism and nativism. Talked about the America First policy of the 20s. Talked about Smoot-Hawley and the destruction of trade. And talked about this anti-immigration approach and talking about brown people in general, how they shouldn't be othered. This guy who did all those horrible, horrific things, started wars, and honestly, by the way, was a part of the head of the Republican Party that led us to this point of having someone like a Donald Trump in office who's a complete and utter fascist. Yes, it was always headed down that direction. There was hatred towards Muslims. It called everyone that's brown a terrorist. All that stuff happened. And I keep seeing this video float around of George W. Bush talking about the destruction of those isms. And damn it, that dummy who started all that is right. So it just shows you how quickly someone that was warned about at the time as being someone who was dividing the country, causing it to generate more of this racism, still had these things that he said the right way because he knew that was the basis for how many things really work in this country as far as migration goes. And so people are resharing that and talking about, man, I can't believe George W. Bush said something that sounds smart. It's because look at how quickly we've devalued intelligence, reading, education, and reality. Most specifically, reality in this country. The second that this guy that's in the White House now went down that escalator and went straight into those things that W was talking about. Oh, and W was breaking records for golfing all the time until Donald Trump came in. Just a reminder of who W was, in case you guys see that floating around. You go, man, I can't believe W said some smart things. I was a little bit surprised too, because I remember we covered a lot on him. Um, but let's not forget how he helped get us here. Smart stuff, reality based. But those guys that say things like that are not considered radical leftists. Just remember that.